today in this video we'll be discussing two things. First one is about deadlocks and second is about memory. Okay, so this module is divided into these two parts, and if you like the video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So before moving on, what is deadlock, we need to understand. I'll give you a real life example. See, suppose that this is a highway and one car came from here and it stood here. Okay, so one car is here and another car came from here and it is here. Now this car wants to go to this part and this car wants to go here. So but each of these car will be fighting with each other, that first you move then only I will go, or the other car will also say the same thing. So in this case no car will move and the process will be stuck here. Okay, nothing, no movement will happen here. And the same thing if it happens in the computer, it's known as deadlock. Let's see one example for that. Suppose that there is a process P1 and another process P2. Okay, these are the two processes, and we have a resource here R1, and here one resource is there R2. Okay, resource means any variable or data. Okay, now P1 is using R1 and P2 is using R2. Okay, and to finish the process, P1 requires R1 plus R2, both the resource it requires, then only P1's process will be over. Similarly for P2 also it requires R1 and R2. Okay, both the process it requires. So each of this is holding one of the resources. But in this case what will happen, P1 will say to P2, okay, P1 will say to P2, I want the resource hold by you so that I'll complete my resource and give it to you. Then P2 will also say the same thing, give your resource to me, I will complete my work and give my resource to you. So there is no prioritization who will give first. So in this case a deadlock will occur and this process will be stopped here and no changes will be happening. This condition is known as deadlock. Okay, deadlock is a situation where the process wait for each other to release the resource held by the another process. It's called a deadlock. System model means in the computer there are two things, resources and the process. For any task to happen there should be resources, that means data and information, and what are the process to be applied on that. Okay, so a system model consists of resources and process. Now a process can do three tasks. First one, request for the resource, and second one, use the resources, and third one is release the resource after it is over. Okay, so graphically if you see, there are three things in a diagram. The first thing is resources. These two are the resources, printer and the CD drive. Okay, and the process will be these two things, process P1 and process P2, and the third thing is the edges between them. You can see four edges here. Okay, so let's break down this graph. Let's break down this diagram and understand each of the things here. Okay, first one, you can see P1 pointing to CD drive. And what does that mean? P1 means the process P1, and pointing to means it's requesting the CD drive. Okay, similarly if you see here, P2 is requesting printer. Okay, and if you see the other way, if an arrow is from the resource to the process, that means it's holding that process. Okay, means P1 is using the printer but it needs CD drive. If you see here, P2 is already having CD drive and it's using it, and it's requesting the use for the printer. Okay, so this is the thing which you need to know under the topic system model. Okay, you need to be very clear with this graph what it represents, because in the upcoming topics this graph will be used extensively. Okay, so you need to be very clear what this represents. Characterization means when can a deadlock occur. It can occur only when four conditions are occurring simultaneously. Let's see what are those four conditions. The first one is mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, and circular wait. Let's discuss one by one each of these. Mutual exclusion means only one process is holding the resource at a time. So suppose that there is a resource R, R1, and the process P1 and P2 are here. Okay. Now P1 is holding R1, means it's using this, and if P2 wants to use the resource, it can't use because it's mutual exclusion, means at a time only one process can hold the resource, it's not shareable. In this case a deadlock can happen. Why? Because P2 has to wait. Okay, so that was the first thing. Second one is hold and wait. Hold and wait means here it is, P1 is there, P2 is there, here one resource and another resource here. Okay, P2 is holding this one, P1 is holding this one. Now while holding this one, it is, if it is waiting for the other one to use, and same thing is here also, it is holding this resource but it wants the other resource to complete its execution, at that time deadlock can happen. Okay, this condition is known as hold and wait. And the third one is no preemption. What does preemption mean? Preemption means if a process is going on, in between it can be stopped and another process can be executed. Okay, if P1 is going on, it stopped for this time and P2 got executed and P1 continues. If this possibility is not there, then deadlock can happen. Why? Because P1 will continue to execute and P2 has to wait for unknown amount of time. Okay, so there deadlock can happen. And the last condition is circular wait. As you can see in this diagram, P0 is waiting for P1 and P1 is waiting for P2 and so on until P5 and it's waiting for P0. So in this case, yeah, each process is waiting for the each other process. So in this case, a deadlock can happen. Okay. Now, as we know what is deadlock and how it occurs, let's discuss some methods for handling deadlocks. Okay, so there are three protocols, means three ways in which the problem can be solved. First one is use a protocol or an algorithm or a way in which the deadlock can be avoided. We'll be discussing some ways in the upcoming topics. Okay, so that was the first way, and the second one is allow the system to enter a deadlock and then recover it. Okay, detect it and recover it. Okay, and the third one is make the situation in such a case that no deadlock can happen. Okay, means it will be safe from deadlock. That is the third method. Okay, deadlock prevention: when one of the four conditions does not exist, deadlock cannot occur. Okay, so if any of the four conditions, if any one also does not exist, at that time deadlock cannot occur. Okay, so let's see the four conditions. First one is mutual exclusion. In this, the deadlock cannot happen if the resource is being shared by the other process. Okay, so by making the resource shareable, we can avoid deadlock. Okay, and the second one is hold and wait. In this, there will be no waiting, because if a process requires three resources, suppose that P1 requires R1, R2 and R3. At that time, P1 cannot hold all the resources at the same time. What it will do, it should hold R1, and when this gets over, at that time only it can hold R2 and it should release R1. In this case, much of the deadlocks can be avoided. Okay. The third one is allowing the process to be preempted. Okay, so if you allow the process to be preempted, at that time no process will be executing for unknown amount of time. It will be preempted when it is required and it will be resumed when the task at hand gets over. Okay, so by allowing preemption, we can avoid deadlock. The last one is circular wait. And in circular wait, all the processes are waiting for each other in a circular way. So to avoid this, what we can do is we can set the priorities for each of the resources, and a process cannot request a higher resource unless it releases all the lower resources. Okay, a process holding R2, which is of value 10, cannot request R1, which is of value 5, but it can request for R3. Okay, if it wants R1, then it should release all the resources greater than that, which means it should release 10 to get R5. So in this way, a circular wait can be avoided. Okay. To understand the Banker's algorithm, first I'll say you what all will be given to us in the question. Okay. This will not be given, and only these three things will be given along with total. Okay. So first, what we have to look at is how much we have total. Consider A as printer and B as keyboard and C as CPU. Okay. So we have 10 printers, 5 keyboards and 7 CPUs. Okay, you have been given with this many resources. Now there are different processes here in the first column: P0, P1, P2, P3 and P4. 5 processes are there, and the allocation is given here, and the maximum need is also given here. Now let's understand what is allocation and what is maximum need. For each of this allocation and maximum need, we have 3 columns here for A, B and C. Okay, so let's consider the first case for P0. For P0, the allocation is given as A as 0, B as 1, C as 0. What does this mean? This means that 0 printers have been given to process P0, and 1 keyboard has been given to P0, and 0 CPU has been given to P0. Okay, so among this 10, 5 and 7, 0 printer has been given, 1 keyboard has been given and 0 CPU has been given. Okay, so that was the allocation. Similarly, for process P1, 2 keyboard are given, 2 printers are given, and 0 keyboard are given, and 0 CPU are given. Okay, so allocation shows us what are the process already given to, what are all the resources already given to the process, okay, before starting the execution. So we'll calculate how many resources are already given to the process. So then we will come to know how much is remaining with us. When we add this, how many printers are already given? It's 7. Okay, so all these process have total 7 printers already given. And what about the keyboard? How many keyboards are given? 2. And what about the CPU? 5 CPU has been given. Okay, so how many we have remaining? 7, 2 and 5 are given. So 10 minus 7, 3. This much is remaining, means 3 printers are remaining. And 5 minus 2, 3 keyboards are remaining, and 7 minus 5, which is 2 CPUs. So these are the resources which we have available with us now. What is maximum need? This means for the process P0, it needs 7 printers, 5 keyboards and 3 CPUs for its process to be completed. In the same way, for P1, 3 printers, 2 keyboards and 2 CPUs are needed for this process to be completed. You can think of as P0 saying, give me 7 printers and 5 keyboards and 3 CPUs, then my process will be completed and I will exit the queue. Okay, so let's see what we can do now. How much we have here? 3, 3 and 2. Maximum need is 7, 5 and 3, and already allocated is 0, 1 and 0. So this is the maximum need, but already we have given 1 to P0. So what is the remaining need? Remaining need will be 7, 4 and 3, because 1 is already given, right? So like that, for P1 it is 3, 2, 2 it needs, but we have given 2 printers already. So it has the remaining need of 1, 2, 2. In the same way I have written for all of these. Okay. Now what we'll be doing is, we have to fulfill the remaining needs of the process. In which way we will do? First we will select this one, or then we'll select this one, or which sequence we will do, so that all the process will be executed without having to face deadlock. Okay, so we'll compare these 3 values first, 3, 3 and 2. Can we can we fulfill the need of process P0, 7, 4 and 3 with 3, 3, 2? No, it's not possible. So we'll move to the next one. Is it possible to fulfill this need with the available resources? Yes, it is possible. So when we can give 1 from 3 and 2 from 3 and 2 from 2. This need can be fulfilled now. What we will do is, we'll give these resources to the process P1, and its need will be fulfilled. It will exit the queue. Okay, when it exits the queue, at that time the allocated resources will be released. That means these resources will be free now. We can add these resources to the available list. Okay, so then we'll have the total resources as 2 plus 3, 5, 0 plus 3, 3, 0 plus 2, 2. Now this is the available resources which we have after executing the process P1. Okay, so let's see how to write this in the formula way. Okay, see here, firstly we'll be writing work means nothing. Work means 332, that is how much is available. Work means available. Okay, don't forget, work means available. How much resources we have, that we are representing by work. Okay, so it's 332, and then we'll initialize P0 to P4 as false, because none of the process has been completely executed as of now. Okay, then what we'll do, we'll initialize I as P0. That means we are starting from P0. Okay, so I will be P0, and then we'll write this formula. Need of P0 is less than or equal to work. Work means available resources 332, and what is the need of P0? Need of P0 means how much resources it needs more, how much resources the process P0 needs, so that the execution of process will be over. That means 7, 4 and 3. Okay, so we'll be checking, is the need less than available resources? If it's not, we'll write P0 cannot execute now, and then we'll move on to the next process. What is the next process? It's P1. What is the need of P1? This is the need of P1, 122. Okay, so 122 will check if it's less than the available resources. Yes, it's less than the available resources, so it will execute. After the execution, it will release the resources held, which is allocation P1. Okay, what is allocation P1? These are the resources which it had initially held. It will release it. So the released resources should be added to the available one. Okay, see, these are the allocated resources. When this releases, we'll add it to the available. Available means work. So we'll add the allocated resources to the work. Okay, that's what we are writing here. The allocated resources are added with work, and then work will be 532. Now this is the amount of resources which we have now. Okay, then we will make finish of P1 as true. So since P1 is finished, it will become true now, and it will exit the queue. In the same way, next is P2. What is the need of P2? We'll check at the table what is the need of P2. It is 600. And how many resources we have now? We have 532. Can it execute now? No. See, these both can execute. 3 and 2 is greater than this, but this should also execute. Okay, then only it will be possible. All three should happen at the same time. Okay, if it's not, then we'll move on to the next process. Next one is P3. What is the need of P3? Looking at the table, I get the need of P3 as 011. Is it possible for me to execute with the available resources? Yes, it is possible. So I will execute this one, and then I will add the allocated resources of P3 with the available resources. What are the allocated resources of P3? The allocated resources of P3 are 211. I'll add 211 to the available resources I have, and then I'll get the total number of resources which can be used is 743. Now after P3 it is P4. I'll do the same thing. Need of P4, is it less than work? Yes. Then complete the work and add the allocated resources of P4 to the available resources. So then this is the available resources. Then after P4 what it is? After P4 there is no process. So again we'll start from here and check which are remaining. The first one P0 was remaining, so I'll check 743. It's possible, yes. Then we'll check the next one, and in that way we'll go on until all the processes are executed. So if in case all the processes are executed, that means the system is in safe state. Okay, that means deadlock will not occur if we follow this sequence. Okay, now there is a second question that if P1 requests 102, okay, what does this mean? P1 requesting 102 means P1 already had 200. If it is saying I need 102 more, means if we will give it 102 more, 2 will become 3, this will be 0, this will be 2. So with initial values of 3, 0 and 2, can we can we try to deduce a safe sequence with this new value of 302? That we will be checking in the next part of the question. Okay, so after it requests 102, then the need will be checked. It's less than 122, so it will be given to P1, and after that it will we'll be checking if it's available or not. It's available, it's less than 332, so the request is validated. Okay, and now we'll be checking if it's possible to make a safe sequence or not. Okay, so this is the same thing, everything is same, only this thing has changed. It has become 302. And what is the available we have? Available is 230. Okay, since new allocation has been made, the available resources has reduced by a small bit. Okay, and the need has also been reduced here because it already took some resources, so its need is lesser now. Okay, so by using this same by using this data, we'll be doing the same thing. Let's see how to do that. Firstly, work means available. Available means 230 are available, and finish of P0 to P4 will be false initially, and then we'll be finding out from P0. What is the need of P0? P0's need is 743. See here, P0's need is 743. Is it less than the available resources? No, it's not. So we'll move on to the next one. The next one is P1. What is the need of P1? 0 to 0. Is it less than the available one? Yes. So it executes. After the execution, it will add the allocated resources, means how much P1 had allocated. That means these resources will be added to the available one. Okay. And those will be the available resources we have, and P1's value will be made as true. After that, P2 will be seen, and it's not possible, so we'll move on to P3. It's possible. We'll add the allocated resources of P3 to the available resources, and then we'll move on to P4. In the same way we'll do, and we'll try to see if we finish all the works within the available resources. So we come to know that it's possible by using this sequence, even if P1 requests 102. Okay, this was for the second part of the question. Even if the process P1 requests this at the beginning, still it's possible to have a sequence of safe state wherein deadlock will not occur. Okay. In case a deadlock happens, we have two ways to overcome from it. First one is process termination. That means end the process and recover from deadlock. Second one is resource preemption. That means the resource which is taking, the process which is taking a long amount of time, that should be preempted and stopped, and the other process should be executed, and then the previous process resumes its task. Okay. In these two ways, we can recover from deadlock. Let's understand what is how the program is stored inside the memory. If this is the program, in the small part of the memory it will be stored, and the address will be given as the base register, which is 14,000 in this case, and the limit will be given in the limit register. So the accessible memory will be from 14,000 to 14,100. In between these two, if it is stored, then only CPU will be able to access. The first check will be of the base. If it's lying within the base, and then the base plus the limit will be checked. If it's lying within the limit, if it's yes, then it will be able to access the program from the memory, else it will fall into a trap. The next one is address binding. That means we have some variables here. Suppose that the variable has the value 10 here, and it should be bounded to the physical address before executing. Okay, so if the address is 123, it should be bounded with it, means means the address should be associated with the variable before the execution. We can do this in three specific times. First is at compile time. If you do that at compile time, it's okay, but if the address changes after the compilation, then it has to be recompiled. Okay. And the second one is load time. If it changes during the load time, then in that case it need not be recompiled, but it has to be it just has to be reloaded. Okay. Then the third time is execution time. If we are sure that the location will not change of the variable, then we can allocate it, means we can bind the address with the variable. Else, if you are not sure, we have to wait until the execution time, and when it's going to start, at that time we have to allocate it. Okay. So this is the source program which will have many variables that can be allocated to the memory either at compile time by compiler, or at load time by the loader, or at runtime by the binary memory. Okay. There are two types of memory. First one is physical memory, and second one is virtual memory. It's managed by the memory management unit. Okay. So we have two types of address. First one is physical address, which means if this is the variable stored here, what is the address of this point? That is known as physical address. And the virtual address means in the virtual memory, what is the address of the same data? Okay, this data is also stored here, but only in the form of address. So this is the logical address here, which will be mapped to the main address while execution of the program. Okay, so this is all about the logical versus physical address space. What is dynamic loading? Dynamic loading means loading from the memory only when the program is called. Okay, when the program calls it, at that time if we load any thing from the memory only when it is needed and the program calls, that is known as dynamic loading. It happens during runtime. Okay, there are 2 points to be noted here. First one is dynamic linking and static linking. In static linking means it includes a copy of the whole library in every program. That is also called as shared libraries. So the whole copy of the library will be maintained inside the program. So whenever it is needed, the copy will be referenced. Whereas in dynamic linking, only the references will be given and the library will be called whenever it is needed using the reference. Okay, that's known as dynamic linking. Swapping means if you have a process here which is no more required, and if you want another process to be needed, so instead of the previous process, we'll exchange it with the new process. Okay, so this is swap out and this is swap in. Continuous memory allocation means the continuous memory locations filled with the processors. Okay, the first one will have the operating system, and subsequently each process will be filled in the respective positions. Okay, this is known as contiguous memory allocation. In order to protect the data from the unauthorized users, the CPU is allowed to access the memory, but when it comes to users, it will not be allowed to access, because at this point and this point, it will be checked if the user is authorized or not. It will need to provide the logical address as well as the physical address. User will not have those address, so he will not be able to access the memory locations and the data. Okay. Coming to memory allocation, there are two types. First one is MFT, which is fixed, means all of the memory will be divided into equal parts, and each processor will allocate one of the parts. Okay, that's known as MFT. And the second one is MVT, which is variable part, which means if the processor will be divided into unequal parts, and whichever space is sufficient for the process, that will be used by the process. Okay, there are three ways to achieve this. First one is first fit. That means the comparison will be started from here. If this is enough for P1, if not, it will move on to the next one, and so on, unless it finds the perfect space here. So that is known as first fit. Best fit means the least amount of space in which the process P1 can fit, that will be found out. Worst fit means largest hole which is available here, which in which the process P1 can be allocated, that will be given. Okay, so these are the three ways. Fragmentation is fragmentation basically means free space which is left. Okay, there are two types. First one is internal, second is external. Internal means, see here, suppose that this total space is 50. Okay, and P1 is just 40. So here space is left, right? That cannot be used by any process, because only 10 space, no process is such a small process that 10 spaces will be sufficient for it. So here the wastage of memory will happen, the wastage of space will happen here. Okay, so that's known as internal fragmentation. And coming to external fragmentation, if two processes occupy these two places here, and these two are suppose that 5 and 5, and here also 5 spaces there. If a process comes and it wants a space of like 10, at that time it cannot use this space. It will have to take two blocks from here, and this will be wasted here. The space which is left between the two blocks, that is known as external fragmentation, and the space left within the block, that's known as internal fragmentation. Okay, as we know, there are two types of memory. First one is physical memory, and second one is logical memory. If the logical memory is divided into many parts, each one will be called as page, and if the physical memory is divided, it's known as frames. Okay, so the connection between frames and the pages is given by page table. Okay, and this process is known as paging. So let's take an example and understand logical address. In logical address, this is the physical memory, this is the page table, and this is the address here. So if I want to access any part of the memory here, how will I access? See here, this is the page table which is given. So first I need to know what data I want to access. It is in which page? It is in P3 here. So look at the P3's code here. It is 011. So my logical address will be 011. It's actually 11 here. So 011, and what is the word in the page? Each word will have an address here. So this address is 111 110. So I'll be writing here 1110. So this is the address which will be used to access the word from the memory. Okay, so that was for the logical address. And coming to the physical address, if you have to calculate the physical address of any frame, at that time we'll be using the same thing. This is the frame number, and inside the frame, what is the word which we need? Okay, so by using these two values, we'll access the word inside the frame, and frames are in the physical memory. Okay, so see here, if CPU wants any word from the memory, it will check in the logical address if it's present or not. If it's present, it will translate to the physical address, and it will access the word from here. Else, if it's not present in the logical address, it will look up at the page table, and in the page table will the page table will send the address to the physical one, and physical will fetch the word from the memory. Okay, so page table will act as a reference guide. Okay, if it's not present here, it will look up here, else it will directly fetch from the physical address. Okay, and one more thing which we need to know is the free frame list. Free frame list means how many frames are free. Okay, so the numbers are given here. These are the free frame list. Okay, so these all numbers will be included, but I have included only a few of them. Okay, so these are the new pages which are to be filled. So each one will be allocated to the pages here, and that will be noted down in the page table. So the pages will be allocated here, and then the free frame list will have only 15, which is empty. Okay, rest all are filled by the pages here. Okay, so free frame list will give me the list of frames which are available. Memory management is a very complicated task, so hardware support is required. Hardware support means there are a set of registers which will act as the reference guide for the CPU. Okay, by using this, it's known as TLB, translation look aside buffer. So by using this, we can access the memory locations much more faster. Okay, so see here, when a CPU requests something, the logical address will fetch directly if it is present, else it will look at the page number and the frame number. To make this process faster, to make this faster, we'll be using TLB also at the same time. And if it's present in TLB, it will send directly to the physical address, or it will check from here and then it will be sent from here. Okay, so it will just make the process of fetching the memories faster. Okay, and there is a second advantage to the page table, that it will keep the valid bit or the invalid bit, and it can be used for the page table to indicate whether a particular entry is present or not. Okay, so it will help in the faster fetching of the data by looking at the valid or invalid bits. Okay, and the next one is shared pages. That means if two processes require the same data, that data can be shared between the two processes just by having the reference of the page here. Okay, we need not have two copies fetch again and again. Okay, only the reference is sufficient. What is the structure of the page table? Page table can be either 2-level or 3-level programs, 2 or 3-level paging. Based on the size of the program, we'll be setting 2 or 3-level. Okay, so what happens is we'll be having the separate indexes here, and each index will be pointing to the starting and the ending point of the memory location. Okay, so if you have a bigger data, so at that time we'll be using the outer table also, which will have the addresses to the these tables. Okay, and this will be pointing to the main memory. Okay, this is known as hierarchical paging. And the second one is hash page table. Okay, in this we'll be addressing we'll be creating a number which is generated by hash function, using which we'll be mapping to the physical memory. Okay, so it's nothing but it's the map from the logical memory to the page address by using a hash function. One is the inverted page table. In this, we'll have those processes only which are currently being executed. Okay, so all processes will not be executed. Only those processes which are there executing, that will only be there. In case we want a new process, we'll be searching using PID. If it's present here, we'll be directly passing to the physical address, or else we'll search in the page table by using the PID, and then we'll be fetching from the main memory. Okay, in logical memory, what we see is the whole thing is being kept at one place, but actually it's not at the one place only. Due to segmentation, we get to see it as the same place, but it's all different parts of the memory. See here, this one is stored in segment 0, this one is stored here, and this one is stored here. Okay, but by the but by using segment table, we can keep a note of where all these are stored, and then we can easily combine all of this at the same place. Okay, giving us the giving us a view that these all things are stored in the same memory location. Okay, that's possible by using segment table, and this is the main advantage of using virtual memory. Okay.